Hello and welcome to CounterPunch Radio. My name is Eric Draitzer. Thanks so much for tuning in, coming back to the show. First time listeners finding the show, welcome aboard. Always happy to have you. Hope you've had a chance to go over and get a subscription to CounterPunch Plus. That is our exclusive section for our members and subscribers. That is how you can support Counterpunch. We've been around for 30 years. We're going to be around for many more years in the future and bringing you all kinds of insights and analysis from the left, from a variety of perspectives, many of which won't find platforms elsewhere. So go over to Counterpunch, get that subscription. I've been plugging the Counterpunch Plus Journal. That is the best of 2021. Go over to get a $12 copy of that. It's well worth your time. Now, I'm going to move over and get my guest onto the call here. Boris Kagarlitsky is with me. He is one of our favorites at Counterpunch. He is a historian, sociologist, activist, author. He is the chief editor of the online journal robkur.ru, and he is the director of the Institute for Globalization and Social Movements. And most importantly, if you want to follow his most recent writing, which I absolutely could not recommend more highly, go over and subscribe to Russian Dissent. That is on Substack. Russian Dissent is one of the most important subscriptions you're going to make anytime in these months and, well, in 2022. So I highly, highly recommend it. Boris Kagarlitsky, welcome back to Counterpunch.
Hello, Eric.
Thank you so much for giving me some time today. We're recording here on September 9th. So, Boris, I'm just going to ask you, give us the rundown of what's the situation like in Russia. You're in Moscow. What is going on there? People, what is the mood? Are people talking about the war? Are people ignoring it? Is it happening in some far off land? Tell us how the discourse is going.
Hi, Eric. First of all, yes, it's very important that I think now people already started noticing the war, because a major problem during the first months of the war was that it continued taking place kind of unnoticed for the great majority of people in Russia, as if something was happening very, very far away in some distant galaxy, quoting the famous movie. Uh, and yes, things started happening recently when huge majority of Russians started noticing that something is going wrong. Something is going really, really wrong. It is partly because of more and more people getting killed, but also the very fact that the war continues for much longer than it was expected also changed the perception of what was happening, because it was officially announced as some kind of special military operation, something which is a little bit like a kind of commando action, a bit like what United States did in Panama, for example, or something like that, or Grenada. Well, of course, American society noticed these events, but anyhow, these were just one-time operations, and these were not protracted wars affecting lives of millions of people and so on. And the initial perception which the official media wanted to establish and promote was exactly like, well, there is something happening in Ukraine. It doesn't really matter for many of us, and some special troops are in action, but that's it. And then the first change was when, after 6 months of military activities, quite a lot of people who trusted the official media started asking questions. Why is it going on for so long, and what is it happening? What is it? What is it happening there in Ukraine really? And also, the official media failed to give us any explanations. There is one point which is very important. It's not because of the lack of information on the official side. Actually, there are loads, tons of materials on the official media with some kind of war propaganda. The point is that most people in Russia did not bother, and even now don't bother watching these television programs or reading these newspapers, or even they're not interested in going for it online in the internet. because the great majority of Russian society, the tremendous majority, maybe 85% of the population, are totally apolitical. They're totally uninterested in anything political. And the point is exactly what happened to these people. And it seems that, well, about a month or two ago, these people started asking questions, and these people started getting interested and involved with what's going on. That's one aspect of the situation. And then all of a sudden, even the official sociological survey institution called ВЦИРОМ, which is very, very close to the Kremlin and which is very much part of the propaganda infrastructure of Russian elite, suddenly published a report that the support for the war was declining. It was published already about a week ago, and it was not just 1 or 2%, it was massively declining. So it means that the official media has to recognize the fact that the things are getting out of control, and the public perception of the war is changing, and people, even those people who are not necessarily in opposition to the war, are feeling tired of it. And they're starting asking questions about whether it's going to happen and how is it going to, whether it's good, sorry, people are starting asking questions whether it's going to stop and how is it going to stop and so on. So in that sense, the public mood is very, very different. And now compared to 3 or 4 months ago. And the second aspect of the situation is the development of military situation on the ground in Ukraine. And Ukrainian counteroffensive became a very important factor. First of all, because the very fact that Ukrainian army was able to start a counteroffensive contradicted everything which was said on official television, which was said on the official pro-Kremlin media, and so on. And then, to make things worse, the counteroffensive happened to become very successful. Right now, we are following the events near and around Balakleya town in northeastern Ukraine, where Russian troops happened to be defeated massively and now seem to be on the run. And that is also a very humiliating fact, which also damaged their propaganda and damaged the ideology of the so-called state patriots. So in that sense, the situation is changing. It seems, again, we cannot prove it because this is the information which I get from the Telegram channels, which are very often anonymous, so I cannot prove it. But it seems that there is a tremendous anger among the military. Because at this point, the military are already quite aware that they were forced to fight a war without any chance of winning it. So they're very angry at the political leadership who made them suffer these defeats and humiliations. And just yesterday, there was supposedly, according to the Telegram channels, there was a conversation between Putin and one of his generals, who just said a phrase which maybe will become historical. He said, "Dear dear Vladimir Vladimirovich, you failed it." And this is something which now people repeat. They failed it, you see. So it seems that something is going to change. How fast, we don't know, but it's going to change. The big question is, what kind of change are we going to expect? Because It is already very clear that the war is not going to be won. It's going to be lost. But what will be the consequences? That is the big question, and that is something we have to discuss. And I have I can make some predictions, possibly, but uh, the important thing that we are right now facing a turning point here in Moscow and in Russia.
It's very interesting to think of it as a turning point. I want to return to the poll that you just mentioned, coming from basically the official polling from the Kremlin. Why would they release something that clearly demonstrates that their public relations and marketing has failed?
Well, I think there are two problems here. One problem